Hey guys, this is Tom from Tom Builds Stuff, and today I'm going to show you how to replace the front and rear windshield washer fluid pumps on a BMW F25 Series X3. First, let's discuss why you might need to replace the windshield washer pumps on your BMW. The first reason is that the strainer could get clogged. The tank could develop algae, and over time that could build up and get sucked into the grates of the strainer, clogging it. And the way you'll know if this is the case is that you check the nozzles and they're not clogged, and you hear the pump running, but no washer fluid gets to the windshield. So either the lines are clogged or most likely the strainer's clogged. Another problem is that the rubber grommet fails, which will cause a leak. The grommet is it seals the hole where the pump goes into the tank. And if you're losing washer fluid fairly consistently, and there's nothing really, determining when you lose the fluid, that might be the case. Another problem is that the pump simply failed completely. You pull the stalk to initiate the washer fluid, and you don't hear the pump running at all. And the final reason, which is the reason I had to change mine, is the pump seems to work fine, but it leaks after I'd use it. I'd fill up the tank and it would be fine for days or even weeks at a time. I could even wash my rear window without a problem, but when I'd wash the front windshield, it would work fine, but the next day I'd have no fluid in the reservoir because the tank would start to leak after I used it. I'm not sure what causes it, but the pump needs to be replaced to fix it. And in the interim, I would just add enough washer fluid to do a few washings and remember to add some the next day if I used the washer fluid. So I waited until I had to do my brakes so I could do this too. I'm using pumps made by Euro. I've used these pumps before and they've worked fine and are affordable. Even though only one pump is bad, they're a pain to replace, so I'm replacing my windshield and rear pumps at the same time. These are the same type of pump. I don't have headlight washers, that's a different type of pump. 2 grommets with strainers are from Euro as well. And I also got some plastic rivets to reattach the fender wheel arch. Links in the description for the exact parts I used. The first step is to jack up the car using the front center jack point. I placed 2 jack stands under the jack points behind each front wheel using rubber jack pads. I kept the jack in place after resting the car on the jack stands as a backup. Next, the front right wheel needs to be removed using a 17mm socket. Next, the plastic rivets along the inside of the wheel arch need to be removed. To do this, I'm using an awl and hitting it with a pair of needle nose pliers because it didn't need much force and I was too lazy to get back up to get a hammer. You can use a large nail and a can of soup if you don't have an awl and needle nose pliers. The center stem just needs to be ejected out the back. There are 5 along the back and then there's also 5 along the front. With the center removed, I just use a flathead screwdriver to pry off the base of the rivets. You might have to tug hard because the back of the base will still be a little bit deformed, but they should come out fairly easily. There are 10mm plastic nuts and 8mm hex head screws that need to be removed to be able to remove the wheel arch liner. There's a few of them inside the wheel arch, so take your time and make sure you get them all. Keep them someplace safe because we'll need to put them back in. And yeah, I noticed the boot on the strut. I actually need to replace both struts at some point soon. Probably not something I'm going to do myself though. Don't forget this screw that connects the front and back liners. Underneath, behind the tire, there's a different type of plastic rivet that just pries off in 2 pieces and 2 more 8mm nuts. All the fasteners should be removed now from the liner and we should be able to pull it out. And if it doesn't come out, just check. It probably missed a nut or a screw somewhere. It's a little difficult. It overlaps some areas and goes under other places, but you can wiggle it out from the top and then push it out to the side to get it out from under the fender liner. This side is pretty flexible, so it shouldn't be too hard to get. If you feel any resistance, stop because it could damage or tear, and make sure you removed all the screws, but in this case they're all gone and I just put it someplace safe. I did the same repair on an E90, and I didn't need to remove the front arch cover, but on the X3, the tank extends well beyond the front arch cover, so need to punch out the rivets on this side too, and take out some of the screws. Not all of them, all the rivets though, and at least the screws on the top half, just so I could pull down the liner enough to get the tank out. The front liner material is a lot more rigid than the back, so you need to be careful when you're bending it so you don't crack it. That's why I'm removing a lot of all the rivets and more of the 10mm plastic nuts and 8mm screws, just so I could bend it down far enough without having to give it a hard bend that might damage it. Now we could get in there and remove the nut that holds the tank in place. There's just one nut, I think it was 12 or 14mm. From under the hood, we want to disconnect the fill tube from the tank. It just mounts on the engine over there, and the hose just plugs into the tank. I just pulled it out. There's no clamps or anything, just the friction fit. These wires are connected through a plastic connector, and I just yanked it out and it didn't break, thankfully. If it does break for you, just use some wire ties. Now we can pull out the tank. Just has to kind of rock out counterclockwise. The wire for the side marker light was a pain, and probably should have taken that out. It would have made things a little bit easier, but I was able to get the tank out without any issues. Here you get a quick glimpse of where the pumps are before the camera moves, unfortunately. Just need to remove the connector, the electrical connector from the top of the pumps. There's a tab, press it, and then pull down. And then pull the pumps out, and they're gone. This was gonna be a surprise. There was a little plastic clamp around the end of the hose that held the hose in place, and I just used a screwdriver to pop it open. Made sure I didn't lose those because I didn't know what the part number was, how to get them. There was one for each of the two pumps. Like I said, I don't have a headlight washer, so I only have the two pumps. You could do the same repair at this point too if you have a headlight washer. So once the clamps are out, the old pumps pull off. Use a screwdriver to pry out the old rubber grommets. The first one looked like it was in pretty good shape, and I wasn't too concerned. But actually, neither one was leaking. But you'll see the second one here in a moment. Here you go, and it was pretty gunked up with. Oh no, that one was a clean one. Sorry about that. Yeah, this was not the best angle for the shot, but just carefully pry out the strainers, the grommets. And the strainer will come with it. And this is the lower one, so it's closer to the bottom of the tank. I forget which one was the top, which one's the rear, which one's the front on these. But this one was pretty gunked up with algae. It was pretty black and disgusting. You can see it right there, all that gunk. So I put the new grommets in, and I'm installing the new pumps. It's a little hard to get in. Just kind of pushed it in and then forced it up to get it all the way down into the grommet. Put the grommets in first, got them seated properly. Made sure the pump was oriented the right direction and the hose was facing the right way. And it's a little bit of a tight fit, so I pressed it in there for a while. So I got it. It's kind of a weird angle. It might have been easier if I just took the whole tank off, but that seemed like a lot more work. And actually the second pump went in a lot easier. And once the pumps are seated properly and set up, I'll just put the hoses back in place. And it's hard to screw this up because the hoses are the right length. There's a shorter hose to get to the closer one and a longer hose to get the same with the electrical connectors. They just snap back in place. And now we could just rotate the tank back in, and it has to hook in to the back, so it does have to rotate a certain way, but it's not that hard to do. And then squeeze it past the front liner, since we didn't remove the whole thing, and get it back into place. And it shouldn't be too difficult. Make sure all the wires haven't dislodged, that the hoses are still in place, but it wasn't that difficult. I got the filler tube back in, and I put in some fluid just to test it out. So let's see the rear washer, and that's working fine. That's a good sign. And the front washer is where I had the problem, and that's working fine too. And you can see my brake light because I need to replace my brakes. And I waited to do this when I needed to do the brakes, so I have the wheels off and the car up at the same time. And that's just putting everything back together, and there's this nut that attaches the tank to the car. I already put the filler tube back in. This is a little hard to get. The easiest way to do it is just to kind of stand up and look over from the top and tighten it down. Some Loctite, I think, or some thread locker would be good in this situation. Now the front liner, as I mentioned, was rigid and it was hard to get back under the wheel arch cover. What I wound up using are these tire irons for bicycle tires to get the tires back on the rim, or you could do some other like plastic tools. Then just put the rivets back in where they came out. This was a push rivet that was like on the bottom where you just put the base in and push in the top. Try to get everything aligned again. Now we can put the rear arch liner back in place. This is a little hard. It goes over some parts, under others. It's a little bit of a tight fit in some areas. But take the time and don't try to force it if it doesn't look like it doesn't want to go. And eventually it will get back in place, just rocking it slowly in the right direction. Make sure the studs line up with where the holes are for the nuts, and the holes are where the screw holes are as well. And that's pretty much it. And we'll just start putting in the screws now and the nuts. You know, this 8mm screws and then 10mm plastic nuts on the front, on the back. There's a bunch of them, and don't forget there's a couple underneath behind the wheel. You're probably gonna, like I did, miss some, so just look over every part carefully. There's a couple of parts near the control arms where there are two that are hard to spot, but just take your time and you'll get them all. The last bit before putting the wheel back on, lowering the car and calling it a day is to put the plastic rivets back in. You need to order new rivets, and I have the part in the description. And you'll also need one of these plastic riveters. I don't know if a standard riveter will work, but I was actually able to pick this up the same day from Harbor Freight because I forgot to get one. And then there's some rivets in the front. 5 rivets in the back, 5 rivets in the front. I actually had 10 rivets. I thought I was going to have extra because I didn't realize I'd have to take off the front one. And that's pretty much it. I did this repair over a week ago and everything's been working fine. I haven't had to refill my tank at all. And I've been using the washer fluid almost every day because I'm just so happy I could use it without it spilling out on the garage floor after I do. So everything went pretty well. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them if you leave a comment. I don't do a lot of car videos. Actually, I don't do live videos. This is the first car video, and I'm probably not going to do too many more, but I thought this would be helpful since I couldn't find one when I was looking for one. I do have other woodworking projects, do-it-yourself projects, and structured media type things on my channel, which I'm starting to build right now, and I also have a blog with a lot of plans to build stuff. If you stuck around to watch this far, I hope you found it useful, and thank you.